happening, everybody? Happy, well, I guess pre-Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving Eve. Is that such a thing? It is here, so we're going to roll with that. Thanks for joining us once again. We've been having a fun afternoon here in the studio. Quick update. Got some cool stuff coming out on Friday. A brand new mastering overheads video series that we're releasing on Friday. It's going to be great. It's going to be affordable. It's awesome. Go to recordingninjaworkshops.com. Sign up for the mailing list because we're going to be sending out some great deals only to people that are a part of our community. Recording Ninja Workshop. Sign up for the mailing list. Get a part of that. What else? Well, today it's all about kick drums. A few weeks back, we did our kick drums, our miking the kick with one microphone, which is great. And I realize a lot of people are in that position that there's 4 to 8 mics and there isn't enough inputs to have an extra kick mic, which is why we did that one. However, as your setups grow or you get more channels, or maybe you do have enough, maybe you've got a 16-channel setup, having an extra kick mic can really, really have a big effect on our drum set sound. The obvious is we're using that second mic to get low end, right? We want to get some of the bottom, get some of the body, which is exactly what we're doing. But it's also, we're trying to get some depth with the drum as well. Bass drums are big. I mean, this is a 24 by 16, so it's definitely a pretty good sized bass drum. But even a 21 by 18, or even a 20, or 21, 22 by 18 to 22 by even 14. A lot of the times we don't hear the depth of it, especially with only one mic in. We're getting a lot of the attack, and we may dial in some low end, but we're still not hearing width and depth. That is something a second mic on the kick can really help out with. So what I want to do today is we're going to use a condenser and a sub kick, kind of show the differences between the two. They do have their uses. Sometimes I use a sub kick, sometimes it's a condenser. Sometimes it's both, really. It all depends on the music. Like with everything we've been doing in these broadcasts, it's more about learning how things sound and how you could use those to make your music better. And that's the same thing with today. A sub kick is awesome. Not always the right thing. Not all music needs a sub kick or has room for it. We're going to start off with a condenser. And I want to do a few different placements with this, because there's a couple things that I kind of think about when using it. Now, this is the CS5 Studio Projects, which is one of my favorite outside kick mics because of the low end on it is really tight, but it's also really round. I also have a lot of good luck with the AT4047, a little more mid-range in the 4047. In this case, I went for more of the rounder bottom. Now, the placement of this mic is kind of important, and this is something that every bass drum is going to be very different. We could do the same thing on my 22 by 18 with completely different results. We went through a couple things this afternoon, or a couple placements this afternoon with this one, so we kind of have an idea of how it's going to react, and I want to show that stuff to you so you guys get an idea of where to put it. What I'm going to do first is, where it is now is our favorite position, but I want to start in the middle of the drum. We're going to have Hal come out here in a sec and hear that. And then we're going to move it back here, and then we're going to move it out to the edge so you get an idea of how the mic reacts as it moves towards the edge of the drum, especially on a drum this size. Now, my placement, one thing I try to use to my advantage when using an outside kick mic is I try to use the drum to my advantage. Instead of having it, up higher, like if I need to go more towards the edge, I'm going to try to go down this direction somewhere, because I want to use this drum to block out some of as much as the cymbals, as much as the snare and the toms as I possibly can. It is outside the drum, so you're not going to kill all the bleed, and you don't really have to be quite honest with you. If you get things placed right, the bleed will kind of be your friend, really. And then we'll talk about the phase on this. So our first position is going to be, let me make sure I'm there. Yep, I'm pretty much dead center of this sucker. And we'll go from there. Hal, you ready to do a little playing, brother? he's setting up another headphone. Ernesto's going to help us out moving this mic around, so he's setting the headphone up. Now, just so we all know what we have going for some context, we're going to go through these mic positions with the bass drum. Then we're going to play to a track. We have a rock track we're going to use, and then we're going to switch over to the sub kick. We do have a pair of Audio-Technica 4047s for overheads, my favorite Pro 63 on the snare, the 3000s on the toms, and a 450 ATM 450 on the hat with the ATM 250 in the kick. And of course, the Studio Project CS5 handling our low-end duties. Hal, you ready to do this thing? All right, let's do it, Holmes. We gonna kick it. Get it? Kick it? That was a joke. I hope you guys got that. I worked all afternoon on that. Don't worry, I have plenty more jokes where that one's comes from. All right. Let's see. Can I hear myself? Yes, I can. Boom. All right, folks. So here's what we'll do first. We're going to mute everything except for the sub kick. Can you hear me, Holmes? We're working. All right. Just play a straight groove. We are not using any EQ. I'm going to keep everything, well, okay, I lied already. I have a little EQ on the overheads because I wanted to brighten things up a little bit and roll some bottom off. But the kick drum stuff, we're going to leave it all natural. Cool. Thanks, sir. Pretty focused note. It's not bad in the center. It's, you can hear it has a definite spike probably down somewhere around 78 to 80 hertz in that area, but it's pretty focused. Play that same groove. I'm going to pull the inside kick in. Inside only. CS5. All right, cool, thanks. Hey, you guys, if you can, stick some headphones on. Because if you're listening on your phone or something, it's going to be super, super hard to hear this one. So stick some headphones on if you can. Or if you're home, crank up the speakers, man. Get loud. It's pre-Thanksgiving, so get really loud. So now here, play that simple groove again. There's the inside kick. CS5. Together. Pulling the overheads. Snare. Inside only. All right, hold on a sec. Now notice this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to mute the CS5 at first. So we're going to have the kick, snare, and our overheads, and I'll stick the hi-hat in too, going for right now. And then I'm going to turn on the CS5. And note not only how the low end changes, but think of it, try to like close your eyes and imagine the size, how the size of the bass drum changes. Go ahead, same groove. There's the snare. Cool, thank you. We can actually start to hear, the diameter of the drum, which I think is important, especially if you're using a big drum. If you're using a 24, you want a 24, so you've got to find a way to capture the 24. Otherwise, what's the point of using a big drum? You want to go out, and we're going to move this to position 2. So that is starting in the dead center of the drum, which can work a lot of the times. For me, hearing this now, that I can hear a little bit of a that kind of happens. We could notch filter that out, or we could just simply move the damn mic. And I'm going to start with moving the mic a little off, which we marked this one. Paulino, how you doing? Hola, amigo. Matthew, what's happening, brother? Happy Thanksgiving to you too. See, Jason, you got a question. Do you ever use a tunnel? Yes, sometimes. And you know what? We don't have time to get in that today, but that is a great topic that we will probably not in our last couple broadcasts for this year because we only have a few more before we're taking a break. But that is something I do want to go over because there's more than one way to do that. And I've done a few different ways. A couple have worked okay, and I've had a couple work really well. So that's something we need to cover. I did that recently. I don't know if you've seen any of the other videos, but I did that. I had Chad Smith in, and we had the 24-inch Rogers, and we built this huge tunnel, and I actually had 3 mics inside there. We'll go over that. All right, Ernesto, can you hear me? We had position number dos. Yeah, go ahead and move that sucker over. All right, now what we're going to do is, if you think we started in the middle, and if this is the edge, we're just kind of going right in between the center and the edge of the drum. And I'm going to mute, and let's go back and just hear. Go for it. Play a straight groove. Hey, Ernesto. Hold on, Hal. Hey, while he's doing that, give it about 4 bars, and then move it back to position 1 for 4, and then back to position 2. Go for it, Hal. Definitely more of a note. Two, three, 4, boom. So the center, directly in the middle of that drum, it definitely has more of a note to it than when you're in our position 2, which is about halfway out. Now go move it out towards the edge. Same groove, Holmes. Not a huge change. With the kick. Inside. I'm going to bring the snare and the overheads in. Inside. Cool, thanks, Hal. Thanks, Ernesto. I'm going to stay in position 2 because honestly, I like that. Paulino, yeah, it definitely it's a little more round towards the edge for sure. I think too. I think the thing I hear mostly when it's in the center is there's more of a specific note that I think we could run into some trouble with the track if we have too much of a note. And I don't care what manufacturer puts a note inside a drum. You cannot tune an instrument that has 2 heads on it to a specific note. It does not work that way. You can get close, but not exact. Let's do this. Let's run a little track, all right? Actually, before we run the track, I want to quickly talk about phase. Let me pull up just play the kick drum. Okay, so this is both the inside and the outside mic. And like overheads and snares and other things with phase, this is something you have to check too. We moved it around so we know it's in good phase, but watch what happens when I flip the phase on the outside mic. Back on. Hear how the low end comes back? Thank you, sir. You can kill your tone. Just phase in general can ruin your tone faster than anything, but in a bass drum, it strips you of the low end really fast. So you have to kind of pay attention to the relationship of where that inside mic is and where your outside mic is. And you may be able to, I don't worry so much about is my outside mic 1 inch from the head or 2 inches or 3 inches from the head. Because, if you move that 1 inch back or 1 inch forward to make sure it's in phase with the inside mic, when they're playing well together, it's going to do its job. So it's more about making sure the mics work good together. than it is about, oh, my outside mic needs to be 2 inches away from the outside head so it does what it is. No, if it doesn't work with the inside mic, it doesn't matter. So check the phase, and a great way to make sure it's in phase is when you think it sounds good, flip the phase on one of the microphones, on your board, on your gear, in the box, whatever you have. And if the low end just goes away and it sounds pretty bad, then you know you're in phase and you're good to go. If you flip the phase and you get more low end, then you know your mic placement may be a little bit off. However, sometimes just flipping that phase gets you the sound you're looking for, then you're good to go. What do we have here? Jason says he needs an Ernesto. Yeah, Matthew, exactly. It sounds like a cardboard box. Yeah, like you tried to EQ some bottom end into a cardboard box. That's what it sounds like. Ralph, hola amigo, how you doing, brother? I got to get one of the Pearl kits back up for you sometimes, Holmes. Chris, welcome. All right, let's do a little bit of track. So we have a rock track, and what I'm going to do is we're going to run like a verse, pre-chorus, and a chorus. We have some tight hat, open hat, a little bit of everything. And every few bars, you'll be able to see me hitting. I'm going to mute the CS5. So I'm going to mute the bottom end, and notice how big a difference it has on the overall drum sound. Buddy, you ready? Let's rock.
I saw the note when I arrived.
Hold on, I made a mistake. I got to pull everything in. We can't hear anything. There, now we can. All right, so now that was sound check. So we're going to do that again. Come on, I'm already thinking about turkey. All right, now here we go.
I saw the note when I arrived. She said you don't treat me right. She likes it when we always fight. So much he's gonna spend the night. She said we'd never last, so I started working fast. She said you got no class. I said, baby, I like you.
Nicely done. I mean, my false start is what helps. Losing that outside kick, actually, we lose most of the size. Some of the punches in there, but even with, I have that inside kick cranked, and it just loses all its presence, really. And that's, I think, the important thing to try to do with the outside mic, especially if it's a condenser, is you're not just going for low end, but you're going for size as well. Mark, yes, sometimes do it without a front head. And that's also something we're going to cover at some point because there's so many different things we can do with a kick drum and different ways to record it. We will get to that. It's a whole different sound when you pull that head off. You're going to lose a little bit of low end, but it's going to get really tight. And the punch will be just, it'll be kind of flat sounding, but it can sound really cool. For this, that outside kick mic is we're using that outside head, that resonant head basically is a giant diaphragm, yeah, to capture the low end. A lot of that low end on a bass drum is coming from that resonant head. That's where it's all happening. So losing that, you lose some of the low end, or if people use kick ports and things like that, that weight also kind of sucks it away. It focuses it, but putting that much weight on the head makes the head not it doesn't vibrate the way it's supposed to. Now we do have, you guys can see, there's that brown towel is out there again, just barely leaning up on the head. The note we had initially was a little bit longer than I wanted. We could hear a bit of a tail, and for this rock thing, I wanted it to focus. So I'm not pressing up there much. It's just laying against the head a little bit, just enough to dry up the tail. That's all I wanted to do. All right, now I'm gonna come out there. Let's go over our sub kick. Mine's homemade. Okay. So I do like this CS5 for my outside a lot. And like I said, sometimes I use a 4047, or I use both of those because they're very different, which is great. But when you need that extra low end, or you need real low end, we got to use one of these puppies. Now mine, I had an extra pair of, I think, what were those old speakers we had, Ernesto? Those Teledynes, I think. I think we still have one more. Well, we weren't using them ever, so I pulled one of the speakers out and I, made my own sub kick, and I took an extra snare stand and just kind of permanently put it in here, which allows me to easily move it up and down as needed. We're going to keep it pretty low. I'm going to pull the CS5 out here. Now, a couple things to note here. I do like sub kicks, and I do use them. Honestly, we haven't in a while because I like the focused sound of the condenser, especially the CS5. But when the music has room for it, a sub kick can be a beautiful thing because it's just this really big bottom, especially if you know where you want your bottom end to sit. You got to kind of decide, like, bass guitar, bass drum, who's going to really be the boss down there in the bottom. And if you know you want that weight in the kick drum, man, these things are your best friend. Now this is a little different. I know the popular ones are the Yamahas, the NS10s. Actually, an old NS10 I think is a great sub kick. The peak frequency of mine is a little low. It's about 48, around 48 hertz. So it's really capturing some bottom, and it rolls off down to around, mid-20s. So we're getting a lot of low. The sub kicks are a little higher than that. I think between 70 and 80 in that area is where they're really dominant, which makes them a little more like a condenser, actually. So what we're going to get with this sucker is some serious freaking bottom. Now the other thing is, if you make your own, and if you've got an extra speaker laying around, I highly recommend doing it. It's really easy, man. I had an old XLR cable. I just cut the end off of it, and you're just reversing the positive and the negative, and bam, now your speaker is a microphone. And that's the basics of how it works. This has a pretty hot output. I do not have an inline attenuator on it, so I'm going to set this thing back about the width of my hand, a little bit more than that. And I'm going to go a little bit off center here as well, because I kind of like, there's too much of a note here. The sound out here seems to be a little bit rounder to me and a little bit more just low end and less actual note. So let's go in. Let's hear how this sucker sounds now. You ready to kick it? Kick it? Kick it? Is it not cool that I use the same joke twice? Probably. Oh, thanks. Thanks for being on my side, buddy. All right, so now let's get the outside. Chris, what do you got? The outside microphone of the kick drum. Yes, that was a condenser before. A Studio Project CS5. Christian Hogan, how you doing, brother? What do we got? Does a bass drum house with blankets help the kick sound, or is it mainly used to isolate the kick sound from bleeding into the mic? Oh, you're talking about a tunnel. Okay, we got to put bass drum. First thing in January, we're going to have a big tunnel week, and we're going to go over all of that stuff. Christian, it's a little bit of both of those. Depending on how the blanket is attached to the bass drum or how thick it is, can change the effect of lot. I would say the overall goal with a tunnel is to isolate the mics from cymbals and other bleeds so you can really dive into your bottom end. But, we're usually taking those blankets and kind of overlapping them on the kick drum. If you're using really heavy blankets and they're all laying on the bass drum too, it will in fact dry that kick drum out a ton. I mean, it can actually make a big kick drum sound small, so you have to be a little careful how much of that you put over the actual kick, but you need it to get around the kick as much as you can so you don't have bleed coming in on the sides. It's something you have to experiment with. I've used blankets, and I also have a couple gobos that I use that I like even better because it dries it out, but I only have to use one blanket over the top between the gobos and the bass drum, so I'm not affecting my bass drum sound. I mean, think about it, like the tom in the basket, right? if we were to take that tom out of the basket and just barely hold on to it and hit it, that note will be wide open. The sustain will be twice as long. We set it in the basket and it dries it up. Now imagine you have a kick drum and you have 2 or 3 blankets or comforters that you're using to block out the sound, and that stuff is all also laying on the kick drum as it overlaps. It's going to do the same thing. It's going to stop the shell from resonating, which is going to dry it up. I hope that kind of answers your question. We are definitely doing tunnel week. That's what it's going to be called, like Shark Week, but tunnel week. Bottom end. Doesn't quite have the same ring. All right, let's hear this. Let's go. I'm going to mute everybody. Hit that kick for me. Oh, it's going to help. You guys better have some headphones on or your speakers, because that is some serious low end going on right there. Now let me pull the inside kick. Ooh. Play a groove. So here's just inside kick, sub kick, both. My ears are rattling. Play a couple extra bass drum notes in there. Inside only. Perfect. Man, this bottom end now, the note is longer. Remember, now we've got this giant, we've got a 24-inch diaphragm that we're capturing with an 8-inch diaphragm, so we really are extending that bottom end now. But it's actually a pretty nice note. The bass drum, it does, I wouldn't say it has the same kind of depth as the condenser did as far as just hearing the size of the drum, but hearing the pure bottom end. This is why sometimes I would use 3 mics on it. I might have that CS5 out there as well as with the sub kick, so I can capture both of those, the size of the drum and then just the pure bottom end of it. Let's hear what this sounds like in this track, because this is going to be crazy. Cray. All right, you ready, Holmes? All right, I'm going to do the same thing. Make sure I got everything muted I don't need. I'll mute the sub kick every once in a while so we can hear what happens. Here we go.
Saw the note when I arrived. She said you don't treat me right. She likes it when we always fight. So much he's gonna spend the night. She said we never last, so I started working fast. She said you got no class. I said, baby, I like yours.
Man, that's, holy crap, that changes our overall tone. I actually kind of like the sub kick on this. It works. If you've got someone who's playing really busy bass drum patterns, the sub kick may not be the way to go, or at least mine isn't, because of that. Its peak frequency is below 50 hertz. If the bass drum gets too busy, double bass, a lot of 16th notes type of thing, you really kind of lose any definition. It just starts to sound like without any actual note. It's more of a rumble, which is a lot of times why I prefer the condensers, because even if I'm rolling more low end into the condenser, it does a better job of capturing the actual transient. However, when there's room for it, there's no way to beat a sub kick at all. It's just fantastic. Any questions? I saw one from Jason. Do I ever resort to triggers? I try to do that as little as freaking possible. And if it's something I'm tracking and mixing, I'm going to take a lot of the time with my kick drum sound to make sure I don't have to do that. Which first off means planning what we're going to record. We have a goal to start with. It's not just coming into the studio and going, hey, let's get a good drum sound, and then, well, what's this song going to sound like later? No. We do our homework first and make sure we got, okay, we want to get the song in this area. This is the style it is. All right, then all our decisions we're going to make are going to be leaning that direction. And if I do it right, I have a couple mics in there, and maybe I'm going to have some room mics that are helping the kick out as well, and a few other hopefully smartly placed microphones that will allow me to manipulate that sound. I won't go to triggers. However, I'm not 100% opposed to them. Sometimes you get something that once you get to the final song and you're like, man, our song took a little bit of a direction turn we didn't realize, and now the kick drum just needs a little help. I don't ever replace. And I've mixed stuff for people that's been recorded so poorly, and I've been able to find kick and snare sounds without resorting to samples, or at least not replacing anything, a blend every once in a while. But, I don't want to call myself necessarily a purist, because there's definitely a use for triggers, but I like to find it for real first and get as close as I can there. How often do you broadcast? Chris, every Wednesday. Every Wednesday at 6 as we've been doing it. We have 2 more this year. We have next Wednesday and then the 7th of December. And then half our crew's going on hiatus. Tao's heading. Tao, as a matter of fact, you guys can't see him. He's sitting right next to me here. Dude, killing it here. He's going back home for a month. And then Ernesto's leaving to go down to South America. So Hal and I decided we're going to shoot some other on-demand videos. Ooh, a bossa nova with the sub kick. There's something good. So, but we will be here the next 2 Wednesdays at 6 p.m., man. Come back and join us, please. So that's it for today's broadcast. Whatever you have, if your condenser has a pad on it, I would highly recommend turning that pad on before you put it on the outside kick, because you're pushing a lot. There's a lot of air moving right there. If you don't, you can buy these inline input attenuators, and most of them are switchable, 10, 15, 20 dB, and they're cost you about 20 or 30 bucks, not expensive. And you would just you come out of your mic cable, plug into that, mic cable at the other side into your gear, and that can help you get a little bit more headroom. One last thing I want to say from a couple weeks ago on our $400 gear broadcast, I know a lot of you guys liked the Joe Meek stuff quite a bit. We got a lot of stuff that day, or a lot of feedback that day, and I got some other messages about it. Right now, my friends at PMI have a killer deal going on. So go to I think Facebook is just PMI Audio Group, or it's PMIaudiogroup.com on the web, and they have some killer Joe Meek deals going. I mean, some great deals. So if you want to fill a few spots in your 500 rack up for cheap, go hit those guys up. Hal, thank you, sir. Tao, thank you. This is his last one. He's going to Taiwan for a little while, and he'll be back. Thank you guys to everybody. 2:30 in London. Oh, man, you're just getting home from the bar. Went out, had a pint, coming back, record some drums, man. Audix. Do I like Audix mics? Not my favorite. Although I've heard great recordings made by them. It's just, the few times I've used them, I've always liked something else. But like I said, I've heard some recordings that people sent me, they use the Audix, and I go, holy crap, sounds great. So it's really just a preference thing. Not mine. Although the i5 I have used a couple times, and it's been okay, but I much prefer this Pro 63, and a 57 is my second choice. But that's just me. That's just my take on it. So anyway, thank you guys. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Eat some food. If you're in the U.S., eat as much food as you can tomorrow. If you're, well, you know what, wherever you are tomorrow, eat as much food as you can. Have a good day. Hang with some friends. Have a good time. We'll see you next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Adios. Nice. That's the way to end it.